How are we doing, guys? Hytale has received its first official update. It is live now. A lot of information came out yesterday and the day before about the pre-release version. We didn't quite have the full patch notes for that, so I just wanted to make this video going over all of the patch notes, what's important, what you can kind of skip over. There were a lot of bug fixes and things like that that aren't that important, but there are quite a few things here that are of note. And we'll get into those. Movement actually took a very, very big nerf for this patch, so that's also really important. But with that being said, let's just jump right into it. Biggest thing, and I'm sure people are already plenty aware of this, they did add dinosaurs and other NPCs to the game. This is now live. It's in the underground jungles. They did say that you do need to regenerate the unexplored areas to see them. So if you already have an underground jungle that you have gone through, you will need to generate new areas to see the dinosaurs and get their drops and kind of mess with that. And the NPCs and creature area, really the biggest thing is going to be livestock should no longer climb on top of the chicken coop. So hopefully you're not running into issues with your farms or anything like that, as well as, I mean, like, foxes aren't going to attack you anymore unless they're provoked, but that's really not that big of a thing. Some of the biggest changes do happen in the crafting item and farming. So the backpack, as most people probably already know already, the backpack and its upgrades are now easier to obtain. So you just need a tier 1 from the first backpack upgrade, and then the backpack itself costs half of the leather. So much easier to get your hands on that backpack earlier and get a better version going as soon as possible on that. The other thing from that is that all of the leather across the board, all of the hide, is going to take 10 less seconds per leather. You're going to be saving a lot of time here, especially with how much leather you need in this game. Crafting benches now can pull materials for it's almost double what it was before. So now it is 14 blocks horizontally and then 6 blocks vertically, up from 4 and then up from 7. So for the most part, double what it was before. This is going to be much better for the quality of life, considering how much space that these take up. Usually you're making a little bit bigger buildings in this game, so this is a really nice quality of life thing that we're seeing. The other big one is dropped items should no longer get stuck on the side of blocks. This is a really, really annoying thing, especially with the generation. Ores are being generated at the top of caves, and when you would try and get it down, it would just fall onto another block, which was very annoying to deal with, but we should no longer be seeing that. That should be fixed this patch, so huge quality of life update, and I'm really glad that they actually fixed that as soon as possible. Another thing is torches in the offhand. So for me, as like a dagger player or anybody who uses a two-handed weapon, I never use a shield, so torches are always in my offhand. Really nice to know that we can actually place them down now. You no longer have to switch 2 torches to place them down. You can put all of your torches in your offhand. You no longer have to manually swap back and forth between your pick and torches to light up caves now. So that's very nice quality of life. You just never really have to mess with it anymore, because they did change pickaxes and hatchets are now only swung when using the primary action instead of before it was the primary and secondary. Corn did get nerfed, so there was an issue with the game where it was giving 4 essence of life instead of 1. So now it is proper. It is now giving 1 essence of life. Cannot abuse corn anymore. That was fixed. The other big change here is that wood logs now display their respective wood type. So an oak log will now display hardwood, fir will now display redwood, and things like that. You no longer have to guess at what kind of wood you're going to be getting. You'll know exactly whenever you pick it up. Same thing for whenever you're crafting. So instead of it saying trunk, it's now going to say log. That way you're not going to mess up kind of what you're after. It's not going to get confusing. You'll know exactly what you need to make your crafting. It also works in the inverse now as well. So if you need hardwood, it'll tell you which trees drop hardwood. So if you need a softwood log, it will display all of the tree types that actually drop a softwood log, instead of you just needing to know that off of the top of your head. They did add new hit and break sounds. For stone and ores, so now whenever you're mining, you'll hear those. They're a little bit better. It's not that big of a difference, but they are there now. We're not seeing much else here that's very important, just minor things that got changed, stuff that a lot of people aren't even going to notice. This was the biggest one, was new hit sound. A big change that they did is you can now sleep an hour and a half earlier, which is so nice. I felt a lot of the times I was trying to go to sleep whenever it got dark, and I couldn't for like an hour and some change. Now you can actually sleep much earlier in the day now, which so that'll be a much better experience, especially considering how dark night is and how long that kind of cycle is. So you'll be able to go to sleep much earlier in the day now. Not much else in the UI and quality of life section. Character customization, we did get some more customization options. So a couple of different eyes, new mouths, a lavender hair color, and then kind of some reworks here and there, but overall just new customization options. So if you want to go through and mess with your avatar, just know that we have a couple of different options for us now, so that'll be fun to mess with. Combat and balance, the weapon attack should now check for line of sight. This was happening to me if you were trying to manipulate which animation you got whenever you were doing the charge attack with dual daggers. This ideally should get rid of that, getting the wrong animation. That would be the biggest effect that I see out of this. Other than that, it's really not that important. And then now the biggest change, in my opinion, I think the biggest change, a huge nerf to mobility and a huge nerf to specifically daggers and a little bit to swords. There was a misconfiguration that allowed weapon charge attacks to not consume stamina if you timed it correctly when you were swapping to another like a hotbar slot. So for example, if you did a charge attack with sword, and then as soon as that animation started playing, as soon as you got that momentum and you swap to a torch or a pickaxe, sometimes you could keep your stamina. It wouldn't consume any stamina, so you could infinitely charge attack. They have gotten rid of that. I have tested very briefly, but I have tested it, and that is no longer in the game. Cannot do it anymore. So it's a huge nerf to mobility. You'll have to move normally for anybody who is using that consistently. That is the biggest, in my opinion, the biggest change that we're seeing this patch. Never mind the dinosaurs and the other changes here and there. This to me is a huge, for anybody who was using this is a massive change. And I think if they kept this in the game longer, a lot of people were going to be using this, but they jumped on top of it. I think for me, this tells me kind of how important they're going to be looking into things. Like if there are bugs, if there are issues in the game in terms of balance, they feel that it shouldn't be there. Seems that they're going to be very quick to fix that and change that and make sure that that's no longer an issue. So this is a huge change right here, in my opinion. Kind of tells me that they'll probably nerf movement in general if I had to guess. Otherwise, like I'd really hope to see actually that the other weapons just get a buff to their movement options. But for the time being, it looks like the Hytale team is definitely making sure that nothing is too imbalanced right now. So huge change. This was the other one that kind of gave me some pause. Fixed fluid flow behavior when stacking water sources. So there's been some issues with water in general. For anybody who's kind of gone to the volcano, the 4th region, you'd probably notice that the lava is very chunky. It doesn't really flow necessarily. My concern was underwater mining. In my opinion, underwater mining is actually very strong, very powerful. If you do take advantage of that, that is actually still very present in the game. You can still do that. You can still take advantage of underwater mining. They haven't changed anything else for it. I think for general, this is just almost a visual, like a vanity change rather than an actual implementation. And I'll show a clip of this happening on screen right now. But my only concern was that this was actually going to ruin underwater mining, but you can still mine underwater if you're one of those players who are doing that. Very, very strong still. Don't have to worry about this at all. Other than that, there's really not much else here that has changed. Nothing big that has changed. Really, the biggest takeaways here is dinosaurs. They fixed some of the leather grind and everything like that, as well as that big nerf to mobility that I talked about. Really good sign for the health of the game. This is a huge patch to be dropping 2-3 days after release. I'm really excited to see what else comes out of this. Clearly, they're taking into account player feedback. I was concerned that these were just quick fixes that were kind of already in the pipeline that they were able to push out very quickly, but some of these I think are indicative of player feedback that they took into account. So I'm expecting to see really high quality updates and seemingly frequently if this is kind of the track that they're going on. So let me know what you guys think down below, and if you're looking to keep up with all the Hytale news and all those good things, any tips and tricks, I will be coming out with a video about some of the most impactful tips and tricks that I've been able to pick up here. If you are interested in that, please drop a like, subscribe, that way you don't miss a video. I will be covering about everything that I can on Hytale as soon as possible, so stay tuned for that. Thanks. See ya.